Our next speaker on the list is Shad Sullivan. Shad is a fifth-generation rancher from Colorado, Crowley, Colorado, in eastern Colorado, and also in Texas. So, Shad is also the regional director for the state of Texas for RCAP USA, and we're going to glad to have him here, and he's going to speak on the war on beef. Well, we've got the microphone right here, and this is for Facebook Live.
So can I pick this up?
Yeah.
Okay, can you hear me? Of course. Well, I'm here, and I hate to have to follow up all these good speakers, especially JJ. I'm not nearly as dynamic as he is, so I apologize up front. But I'm going to help you understand, and we're going to set these next speakers up on how this is all happening. There's so much, as you guys all know, everything is so complex and fast-moving and changing every day. I mean, once you think you have a grasp on something, it changes, and it becomes something bigger and more immoral and more corrupt and more crooked, and the list goes on and on. So it's hard to keep up with all this stuff. My presentation is the war on beef. It's a little bit behind. I haven't updated it, so there's some things that are changing all the time that are on the way. So, my name is Shad Sullivan. For those of you who don't know me, I know there's a lot of people in here that are very familiar. I am nothing more than an American cattle rancher. I love America and I love ranching. That's what we've done. I'm fifth generation. I'm married to Thea. She's a CPA and she's hard to deal with. But we've been married for 10 years and we've got a 30-year-old and an 8-year-old, if you can believe that. So Thea started over when she married me, and I think sometimes she regrets it. But we love America, and we ride for the brand, and we love Jesus, and we make no apologies for it. That's who we are. So I was born in southeast Colorado. We're fifth and sixth generation there. Some of my family actually came from Frederick, Oklahoma, to Pueblo County, northeast Pueblo and Crowley County, Colorado, on my dad's side. And my mom's side came from Elk City, Oklahoma, before the turn of the century. I was born and raised on Antelope Mesa in northwest Crowley County, Colorado. We're in the northwest quadrant of the southeast corner. We also have an operation at the headwaters of Bitter Creek in Archer County, Texas. It's a winter wheat farming operation, and I split my time back and forth between North Texas and Southeast Colorado. So for me, my mom is a widow. We don't run anything on our ranch in the wintertime in Colorado. We only use it for summer grazing purposes. This is where it all started back in about 1890 at the foot of America's mountain, Pikes Peak. That's why I love America so much. We are primarily a stocker operation. So, short, sweet, we buy a small, lightweight southern calf, and we bring them to our preconditioning yard in North Texas and precondition them, turn them out on wheat until May or whenever the wheat is over. And then we send them to Colorado. We're also a small cow-calf operation. We've implemented this about 10 years ago to grow our own farm-to-table beef. And so we raise these calves in Colorado or in Texas. I send them to finish on grass, the short grass prairies of southeast Colorado. Then we sell them in the beef. COVID was a blessing for us that way. We exponentially grew that very small business because of COVID. And we can't keep the beef on the table. We only slaughter 2 per month. And that's what we do. Okay. I sit on the board of directors as of right now at RCAP USA. We're the smallest independent run and driven Cattleman's organization in the United States. I've been on that board 6 years. I am going off. I represent the state of Texas. We've got about 5,000 members right now across the nation. And our hot button issues are mandatory country of origin labeling, beef checkoff reform, centralization, discovery, and price competition. I am also the private property rights chair. I have, as a very young man, had extensive experience with the State Land Board of Colorado. And that's really what led me here to speak today, is these property rights issues that are so dear to my heart. My family, before a public-private partnership was understood, before government bureaucratic overreach was understood, lost 40,000 acres in 1999 to the State Land Board and the Nature Conservancy through a very corrupt deal. And so that's what drives me today. It's a very passionate issue for me, and it's at the core of all of our freedom. And I also have extensive, I wouldn't say extensive, but pretty heavy experience with national heritage areas. We fought that in southeast Colorado in 2014. They wanted to put a national heritage area over 8 counties in southeast Colorado without all of our knowledge. They almost got it done, but we formed a property rights group, and we defeated that. So we work on conservation issues at RCAF USA. The feral horse issue is a big one. Governmental and non-government overreach. So that's kind of my overview at RCAF USA. Okay, the war on beef. Well, what is it? It's simple. It's the hijacking of liberty and freedom. So if we're going to talk about the war on beef, we got to say who, how, and why. Who, how, and why. Why is this happening? Why is there a war on beef? Why are they pushing you to eat bugs? Why are they pushing you to take this, what's natural to the land, what's God-given to the land, off of the land? Well, we have to understand who is raging the war. And up front, the global cabal. The global elite are running the show. They are the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, DuPonts, Cargill. Who knew that Cargill was formed in 1865? You wonder why they have so much control? They have total control of your food supply. The Kennedys, Onassis, Gates. Now we're moving into people that don't have the bloodlines of the cabal, but have the power and want the power and want a one world order. Gates, Schwab, Bushes. I go to Texas and give this deal, and I say, I know you guys love Bush. No, they don't. I can't believe it. And on 9/11, I loved Bush. I thought he was a hero. Boy, did I learn a lot, right? And Soros. The global elite, or the global cabal, as I call them, they are at the top of the food chain. They control everything globally, every single thing. They control financial, political, and environmental regulations. Total political and production control. They believe in a single body of planet governance. They're all globalists. They believe in population control. They're all eugenicists. What happened with COVID? Then they believe your standard of living must be sacrificed at the altar of what we hear, the New World Order. This isn't new, but it's finally, I'm no longer the only conspiracy theorist out there. Yeah, me and you. If you don't believe me, Nathan Rothschild said, I care not what puppet is placed on the throne of England to rule the empire. The man who controls Britain's money supply controls the British Empire, and I control the money supply. They didn't hide it. They did not hide it. If you don't believe me, look at our own David Rockefeller. He says, some even believe we are part of a secret cabal working against the best interests of the United States, characterizing my family and me as internationalists and conspiring with others around the world to build more integrated global, political, and economic structure. One world, if you will. He says, if that's the charge, I stand guilty, and I'm proud of it. Okay? So, we go back, and we have the global cabal, and the global cabal has to implement this through soldiers. And their main overview of the world comes through the World Economic Forum and the United Nations. The United Nations will be implementing all of this stuff under what we're going to talk about, sustainability, right? The famous word. But they say, the United Nations says, tackling meat is the world's most urgent problem. Well, what is the United Nations? It's an intergovernmental organization aiming to maintain peace and international security. Oh, man, that sounds good, doesn't it? It sounds so good. We need the UN. But the reality of it is this organization is tasked to incrementally and regionally implement the New World Order. Mindy Patterson, who you're going to hear in a little bit, taught me about incrementalism. They subvert national sovereignty and integrate a global governance of economic, political, and environmental power through, again, sustainable development. So, if you have the global cabal using the World Economic Forum and the United Nations, then who do they use? They have their own foot soldiers. And they're global governmental organizations, such as the European Union, the African Union. They have non-governmental organizations, NGOs, nonprofits, and charities. You name them. They're all becoming partners with them. They believe in using environmental non-governmental organizations. This is what's hitting agriculture hard, really hard. World Wildlife Fund, the Nature Conservancy. There's more and more every day. And they're pumping money to these organizations so fast because it's an ideological war, right? And it sounds good when we have an animal on the endangered species list that we've got to save. They get to the heart, right? They use corporations such as Cargill, Tyson, Nestle, Impossible Foods, Archer Daniels Midland. Who doesn't feed some feed from Archer Daniels Midland? All of us do. And they use radical ideologues, what you call socialists or communists, green activists, you know, the ones that tout love and tolerance. They're the same people. Love and tolerance. Kill my baby. Throw you in jail for killing an eagle. You know, they're the ones waving the Palestinian flag around. The same people. They're ideologues. So we have at the top the global cabal, the United Nations, they're foot soldiers. And we must ask ourselves, how? How does the war on beef rage? Well, it rages through an anti-animal ideology called climate change. Who grew up in the 70s? Yeah, 80s. Remember acid rain? You remember global warming? But you guys weren't that stupid, right? So they had to change it. And now it's called climate change, right? It's an anti-animal ideology. Now, the global cabal does not believe that cattle are killing the planet. They don't. They know the truth. What do they say? Satan even knows Scripture, right? He does. They know the truth. But their ideologues below them that they use, they can be convinced of anything. So they believe that cattle are leading to the anthropogenic climate change, which means human caused. They believe that cattle have the highest carbon footprint. But we actually know that proper grazing practices reduce and replenish agriculture's footprint. They believe that cattle are responsible for the majority of methane emissions, especially beef production. Beef production in America is only 4% of agriculture's 9% of emissions. Okay, it's negligible. Transportation in America accounts for 30% of emissions. But nobody says anything about that, right? Because they all still have to get to their meetings. Their anti-animal meetings. And they're not going to walk, right? But you have a guy here by the name of Richard Branson. Anybody know who he is? Yeah, everybody knows who he is. He's actually one of the first investors in Memphis Meats, a fake meat company. And he is an anti-animal activist. He owns Virgin Atlantic Airline, which is the highest polluting airline in the world. So you can't make all this stuff up because of these forked tongues. They believe that cattle are destroying rangelands and depleting natural resources. But we know that proper grazing practices mitigates rangeland fires. We also know that it increases plant and soil health through regeneration. Out there, out west, the west is on fire, right? Well, that's all we see. You know why? Because they've taken the cattle off the land. They've taken the cattle off the land on BLM land out west. And that's why we have these infernos. And they will burn up to a fence and find a place where it's been grazed and stop. They believe that cattle place a burden on the human food supply and actually cause world hunger. We know that cattle upcycle these non-edible forages and create a nutrient-rich protein which leads to food security. We're not going to do this in the lab. This is God-made. We're not going to change what He made. In James Rickard's book, The Road to Ruin, has anybody read it? Mindy, have you read that? The Road to Ruin. He says the climate change is a convenient horse for elites to ride in the implementation of the New World Order. That was really before they started talking about climate change. Okay? Now, none of this is very, very new. Look, June 29th, 1989, UN senior environmental official said that entire nations would be wiped off the face of the earth by rising sea levels if global warming was not reversed by the year 2000. Well, here we are, 2023. We're in pretty good shape, if you ask me. The war on beef continues to rage through what we call sustainable development. Now, what is sustainable development? I'm sure everybody in here knows what it is. It's socially responsible, environmentally sound, and economically viable products that prioritize the three, what are they called? The triple bottom line. Planet, people, and animals. They do this through sustainable initiatives like the Global Roundtable for Sustainable Beef, the Global Roundtable for Sustainable Soy, the Global Roundtable for Sustainable Palm Oil. Now, sustainability is nothing more than top-down method of productive control, and it's driven by the UN. Okay? It's going to be implemented through public-private partnerships with organizations like the World Wildlife Fund. It already has been. It's to regulate and govern producers, consumers, and food systems worldwide. All right? Their goals are gender equality, inequalities. They want to reduce inequalities. It's all about production and consumption control. Okay, let's talk about sustainable roundtables. They're a group of people from government and or non-governmental agencies and organizations coming together to set production standards which producers will abide by to enter a marketplace of a certain industry. So, the United Nations has identified several commodities. The top two, number one, palm oil, number two, beef, that they're concerned about. In order for you, when they implement their rules of order, if you don't abide by their production standards, you will not enter a marketplace. For example, in 2016, in Brazil, the Global Roundtable for Sustainable Soy was implemented, and they send all of their soy to the European Union from Brazil. The European Union required sustainable development on the soy. If you did not comply with those standards of production, you were kicked out of the market. And in 2016, 36 soy farmers committed suicide in Brazil because they were not allowed into the marketplace. Excuse me. All right. So as I say, all of this continues to roll on and get more confusing and more confusing. So the most recent is the United Nations, under the Department of Economics and Social Affairs, have identified their 17 goals. Like no poverty. I know you probably can't read that. No poverty. I can't even hardly read that. But number 11 and 12 is sustainable crops. I can't read 12. Oh, that's a good one. Now I got to get my glasses out. Okay. Oh, yeah. 11 and 12. 11 is sustainable cities and communities. 12 is responsible consumption and production, right? So that's what sustainability is. If you've been to Denver lately, the sustainable development, they're building, what do you call them? That's right, a 15-minute city. And they're building these subdivisions in circles. And they sit the houses right side by side, no yard, no yard, no place to park, within walking distance of your shopping centers. Okay? That's a sustainable city. All right. So there's 17 areas of concern for all of us. So let's compare the language and concepts of sustainability to the socialist agenda. This actually come out of the Russian Constitution. So we'll compare and contrast. For the Global Roundtable for Sustainable Beef, I've got to get a drink. My throat is itching. Thank you. So, to compare and contrast, under the Global Roundtable for Sustainable Beef, Sustainable Development, they envision, compared to the Communist Constitution, it ensures the Global Roundtable, continuous improvement, same thing on the Communist side. And they have the same triple bottom line. Through the Global Roundtable for Sustainable Beef, compared to the Communist Constitution, social, economic, and cultural. Sustainability is communism. There is no doubt. The war continues to rage through corporate and academic collusion. It's ideological infiltration. JJ, Mr. Hamilton, all of them speak on it all the time. These governments are infiltrated at the federal, state, and local level. I mean, we're seeing this, right? Did you guys see where they chased the Jew students into the library and locked themselves in? Right? This is infiltration from that side. They have definitely infiltrated colleges and universities. Let me give you an example. So, a recent study at Oxford in England found that a health tax on red and processed meats can prevent 220,000 deaths and reduce healthcare costs in America by $40 billion a year. Why is Oxford doing a study on American red meat? Well, I can't answer that, but I can tell you who the study was led by. A guy by the name of Dr. Marco Springman. He's a vegan activist. And it was published by the Public Library of Science, which is a nonprofit journal founded by Patrick Brown. Now, who is Patrick Brown? He's the CEO and founder of Impossible Foods. If my dad was alive today, he'd call that an interesting conflict. They use corporations. The centralization of food systems create uninhibited power structures. What happened in COVID? Everybody got sick in these manufacturing plants, these JBS, They didn't come to work. And then all of a sudden, what happened? No food on the shelves. That really happened. That was a big deal. People couldn't get beef. It's because our food supply has been centralized. Because why? You've talked about it. Pay to play. They're all bought and paid for. Corporate America is killing us. And they infiltrate trade organizations. National Cattlemen's Beef Association, American Farm Bureau is out of control. It is out of control. And they are using, the American Farm Bureau is using, the NCBA, TSCRA, Oklahoma, Colorado Cattlemen's, Colorado Livestock. They're using the American Farm Bureau to push their policy because there's less pushback on these beef trade organizations if Farm Bureau is doing it. I don't know why Farm Bureau is so powerful in producing policy for the beef industry. But I do know this, they get a huge chunk of my $1 tax. That's right. It's a mess. I use that story about. Okay. It continues to rage through life, liberty, and property. So the loss of property is really the most egregious thing that can happen to us here in America. They're coming at us through conservation, in the name of conservation, through conservation easements, federal programs, the 30 by 30, which you're going to hear about, the 50 by 50, national heritage areas, the American Serengeti. A little story about conservation easements. This is not new to my people. 23 years ago, the big thing was to put your ranch in a conservation easement in southeast Colorado. Southeast Colorado gets 9 to 11 inches of rain a year, very arid. Short grass country, very beautiful, only if you grew up there. And I love it. They come in and all these ranchers were broke. They valued their ranches. They give them $100 an acre for a conservation easement. Okay? 10 years later, they started getting letters from the State Department of Revenue. You owe the state of Colorado $1 million. What? The people had gotten their money from whoever bought the easement. They put the easement in forever and ever. It's perpetual. And then whoever the state of Colorado hired to value the easements valued them too high. 10 years later, they got letters and they said, your easements were valued too high. You owe us money. These people didn't have the money left. Guess what they got? They got the land. It happened. Federal programs. Who's heard of the Grasslands Reserve Program? Yeah. Southeast Colorado last year, the Farm Service Agency was calling producers saying, hey, here's this great program. Put your ranch in it. 178 ranches in 8 counties in southeast Colorado applied for it. 178 were accepted into the program. Now, here's the deal. That country leases for $6 an acre. They're paying them $20 an acre. Who's going to turn that down? All of my neighbors played into it. I warned them, don't do it. There ain't nothing free, right? Okay, they come through your property rights through public-private partnerships, such as the Nature Conservancy and the USDA, or the World Wildlife Fund and the Beef Checkoff. This picture behind is real. Jerica, you got that? That actually happened. The World Wildlife Fund, who said that beef was a danger, partnered up with the Beef Checkoff. Yes. It's Andy's fault. Did you jump and scream, Andy? Yeah, you did. And then we exposed it, and it's no longer to be found anywhere. That's right. But in my case, the Colorado State Land Board and the Nature Conservancy, that's what hit us. They use animal rights and environmental extremism. They believe that we should end animal ownership by any means necessary. Remember Colorado's PAWS Act? Mindy's going to speak on all this. It would make something simple, pregnancy checking a cow, a felony. That's coming back. The Humane Society Senior Policy Advisor, J.P. Goodwin, do you know him? Okay. He said, my goal is the abolition of all animal agriculture. That's what he said. So, we know that Klaus Schwab said what? You will own nothing and you will be happy. And in 2023 at Davos, at the World Economic Forum, he said, you will eat much less meat as an occasional treat, not a staple for the good of the environment and our health. He also said, I don't know why my throat is all of a sudden itchy. He also said that we are meeting our population reduction goals for 2030. He actually said that. They'll say he didn't, but he did. If there's anything I can get across, it's that property is the foundation of freedom and liberty. That's the most important, and that's what we need to tell our friends. Without private property, none of the rest of this matters. We have to be able to own private property. And it might be that computer, it might be your gun, it might be yourself, it might be your car to get to work, to put food on the table. It might be your land. We have to have it. Private property promotes individual freedom in three ways. It upholds the rights of the individual. It provides distribution of power. What are we seeing? The concentration of power. And it ensures resource access. Right here. I just found out about this, Linda. This right here. You got a copy of it? Resource access. They're coming after your resources. Water, air, land. They have no rights over your land. But Biden is trying to put this through. And I'm not going to say this is just Biden. The Republicans are just as guilty. Ronnie Jackson called me in 2020. He is the representative out of the largest ag district in the nation. And we became kind of friends. And then when they introduced the OFF Act, he called all of us extremists. We're extremists because we think this way. I don't guess we're friends anymore. He won't answer my texts or calls. The more private property is protected, the freer the economic system and the more liberty is enjoyed by the citizenry. The more property and planning are centralized, the more liberty is eroded. It doesn't really matter if it's feudalism, fascism, communism, whatever ism. We have to protect private property. Number one. Okay? Okay, so I wanted to talk to you about the World Wildlife Fund. They're playing a huge role in the world of agriculture right now, and among others. There's others. But the World Wildlife Fund, I believe, has probably received some of our money. And their mission, now they're the most radical environmental organization on the earth, and there are a lot of bad radical organizations, environmental organizations. But their mission is to conserve nature and reduce the most pressing threats to the diversity on life. I told you they're high priority commodities. Number one, palm oil. Number two, beef. Since we're in the beef business, they said, this is coming from the World Wildlife Fund, beef production is a major threat to our natural ecosystems globally. They said, Jason Clay, their executive director of the Markets Institute at the World Wildlife Fund, says agriculture is the biggest threat. He says, we've come to a time where a farmer or rancher can't simply point to their own performance and show how good they are and expect to somehow avoid the ire of people who look at the whole system. He says we got to take away choice from consumers. So if you think he's just coming after the producers, you're wrong. They're coming after the consumers. They want to control what you consume. He says they shouldn't have a choice of sustainability. And he also said if sustainability is a pretty competitive issue, then we need collusion to address it. I don't know about you guys, but anytime they use the word collusion, I'm out. Collusion, I'm out. They're corrupt. So, the World Wildlife Fund, who said beef production is a major threat to our natural ecosystems globally, partnered up with the beef checkoff. The people we pay $1 a head to promote, educate, and research our product for our benefit, partners up with a group that says beef is the biggest threat on earth. You cannot make this up. It is so anti-American, it is not even funny. All right. You recognize that, Andrea? So this is from the Center for Biological Diversity, 1993. This is a study of kind of what they want when they get control of all of this production and consumption. So the red areas are reserves and corridors with little to no human use. The yellow areas are buffer zones with highly regulated use. The pink is Indian reservations, and the darkest is military reservations. Now, the green is where our food is going to be produced. Can you see any green? Not very dang much, right? It is in the breadbasket. But I just want to know where we're all going to live with each other in sustainable cities. So we have who and why, or who and how. We have to ask ourselves, why does the war on beef rage? It's really simple. It's the political and economic doctrine that aims to replace private property in a profit-based economy with public ownership and communal control of at least the major means of production and natural resources in a society. It's communism. That's all it is. That's why this war on beef is raging. It's controlling the means of production through collectivism. They had to come up with a crisis to gain control and implement this new world order. We already know they don't want borders. We already know that. Right? No borders. And by the way, borders are biblical. They created climate change. That's the crisis. How do they get us to jump on the climate change bandwagon? Through a beautiful word called sustainability. Because everybody liked that word in the beginning. I hate it now. It's the solution. And it all ends up being productive and consumption control. It's the total loss of personal and productive liberty. Okay? It's pretty simple on why they're doing it. They want everything you have. Okay, there's this really cool gal. Some of you have probably heard of her. Her name's Andrea Hutchinson. And I was going through her stuff one time, and I don't know if you guys know this, but Andrea is the leading expert on sustainability in the nation. Nobody else knows more. So I followed her footsteps, right? Well, I can't even try to follow. How old is this, Andy? 25 years old? 12? 15 years old? Before we had sustainability, before they created the crisis, she had this mapped out. And if you can see, at the very center is sustainability. Create the crisis, solve the crisis. But at the top is the global elite, right? That was really beyond your time. That's freaking awesome. God put it in you to know it. Is awesome. The war on beef is an interwoven and diabolical web. Okay, so how do we win? I know I'm boring you guys. I'm kind of bored myself. But we have to win this war. These legislators have put their names out, and I'm going to tell you, Mr. Hamilton, these legislators are giving me a bad taste. Because once you walk into the city limits of Washington, D.C., that pay to play kicks in, and they have lost any ounce of morality they have ever had. It's awful. It is a cesspool. I hope that's not mine. That's probably my kids missing. Okay. The war on beef is a war on American values of life, liberty, and property. What do we have to do? Number one, we have to defend the Constitution of the United States. We must become activists for freedom and liberty. Get involved with your church, your local, your state, your federal government, your schools, all of your lower organizations. Start right there. It starts there. We have to end corruption. How are we going to end corruption? I don't know. But we must decentralize our food system by enforcing antitrust laws that we have. We have these laws on the books. Proposition 1 in Texas, the right to farm. You know what that's going to do? They're going to vote it in overwhelmingly. It's going to pass. And these farmers and ranchers in Texas think it's going to give them the right to farm. They already have the right to farm. All that's going to do is give these people who are breaking the antitrust laws a step up and avoid prosecution. That's what it's designed to do. It's designed for the corporate power structure. And I've told them all that down there, and I have made some people mad. They're mad at me. All right. We have to demand the reimplementation in the beef industry of country of origin labeling. We have to do that. We need our consumer to trust us and to know that our beef, where they come from, if they want to pick it out of Mexico, Mazatlan, Manitoba, wherever, it's all the same according to the NCBA. We have to let them know where it's from. They need the choice. And they say, well, it's freedom limiting. No, it's not. Another law is not freedom limiting. It's upholding their ability to live in a free society by giving them freedom of choice. We need that. We need to support legislation that has been enacted. You guys did a good job here in Oklahoma. You know, the OFF Act right now, I'm a big proponent of the OFF Act. It would amend checkoff laws to ensure that a more a fair, transparent, more transparent checkoff program. It won't end the checkoff program. I'm for the checkoff. But man, it's corrupt. It's so corrupt. They're stealing our money. And we have to buy American. We have to buy American. I alluded to it a while ago. I don't know what's going on with this herd share deal through the USDA. That is not good. And Massey ended that this week, but it's coming next year again. Our ability to sell to the consumer, as they're given this money for more packing plants across the United States, they're going to shut down your ability to herd share. You know what that is, Jerica? Well, you can sell shares of a cow for milk. Yeah, and we got to get to the bottom of it. Why is that happening? We don't know. So buy American. You can go to, if you're unfamiliar, you can go to usabeef.org to find a local beef producer in your state near you. Okay? So, I'm going to close this out. That salad looks good. Back in the 1700s, England was afraid France was going to invade them. And it was a big deal. And we know France has their fancy French food, but the English were beef eaters. They loved beef. And Theodosius Forrest wrote this war ballad, and this is part of the war ballad. It said, "Their people slaves of power and pride. Fat beef and freedom are denied. What realm, what state can happy be when wanting beef and liberty?" That's what he wrote. They wanted beef. Because you know why? Where there's beef, there's liberty. And there always will be, because you get to own the land. I'm trying to teach my kid how to love America. And he does. He loves Jesus in America. I'm pretty proud of him. And he'd come to me with this when he was 5 years old. and I got it framed up. I love it. So when the ranch is at peace, no other life is more perfect. I submit to you today, where there is beef, there is freedom. We have to work on it on the local level. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. You guys got some good speakers coming up.